now we bring in Michael Shure. He has forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. And I love him. Michael Shure, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I like the intro. Good to be here with you, Kim, and even without Mark.
Yeah,
We've done this now for weeks, right?
we don't need
So
that guy.
we don't need that
Whatever.
guy,
He's
obviously.
out.
But how's the mic sound? I mean,
The mic
is it?
sounds really good. I like it a
Good,
lot.
good. I think we've graduated to real mics, so
Yeah,
that's good.
sounds great. So I'm reading this analysis on Politico about if Trump decides he wants a third term, because we keep hearing him crack these jokes, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if I had a third term kind of thing. And so
Yeah,
Politico does this analysis about the paths that he could actually take to make this happen. They say he could generate a movement to repeal the 22nd Amendment. He could exploit a little notice loophole in the amendment that might allow him to run for vice president and then immediately ascend back to the presidency. He could run for the president again on the bet that the Supreme Court wouldn't really stop him because they're all in his pocket. Or he could just refuse to leave, which they say would put a formal end to America's democratic experiment. Is I mean, it's all hearsay, but he's the one that's really starting the hearsay by making these comments, a flurry of them, that he's not
yeah,
checking out. Is this
yeah.
realistic even?
Well, I mean, it's realistic in that it's something that we're talking about, and because of him, I mean, it's important that we're talking about it 4 years ahead of time. I honestly think that all of those are ridden with impossibility too, which is encouraging. I don't. A constitutional amendment would require so many Democrats that's virtually off the table, right? And to get the states, there are enough Democratic state legislatures where that wouldn't happen either. So we can get away from it constitutionally, which is where it would be kind of most able to become law. And then if you go to someone running for president, Trump being that person's vice president, which is a little loopholey, and it, when you talk about that as a loophole, it also presupposes that Vance could win the presidency. And if Vance were to win the presidency and resign, it would presuppose that he would abide by the resignation too. So there's a lot that goes into that. I don't see that as the way that that anybody would want to run for president, by having his vice president sort of steal some thunder, and that's what would happen if Vance were to
Right.
run. So I think that is where you kind of run into the problems. Now, as far as not leaving, well, yeah, then you have a crisis that supersedes anything constitutional, and it's an entirely different conversation. And then I would guess that you would have um, a more bipartisan opposition to that, which is, that even with the people that we see as kind of wacko legislators in terms of the way they kowtow to this guy, I think that there's some that would fall away from the Republican norms that we've come to know now, and would oppose any kind of inability to leave. If somebody else rightfully won an election, there's also a way to forcibly get the occupant of the White House to leave should he not leave.
It scares me though, because I'm kind of just counting the days until this is over. So to have someone say there's a possibility it could be extended, I don't I mean, it's hard because as an American, you don't really want to believe that's possible. Oh, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Our rules state that's not the way. But we've seen that he gets somehow magically manages to get around rules, manages not to face consequences for anything.
Yeah.
So at this point, to me, I feel like we have to say everything's a possibility with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true that everything's a possibility, but there's some things that are constitutionally impossible. And if he were to leave, if he were to refuse to leave, that again has nothing to do with the Constitution, but it could certainly, it could invoke other parts of our laws that require him to leave, and or would require him to leave, which would entail having the military force him out, having a National Guard force him out, having
Sure.
actual law enforcement because he would be in violation of U.S. law at that point. Again, those were things that were entertained when, when he was challenging the 2020 election and saying that he didn't lose, that some people were
He
saying
wouldn't
he was
leave.
just going to stay, wouldn't leave. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things Trump has indicated is that, hey, we only have 15 detainees at Guantanamo Bay. Maybe that is a facility that could be used to house migrants that are
Uh,
here, undocumented migrants that are here illegally. We're going to put migrants at Guantanamo?
there's been I mean, during the run up to this, to Homan becoming Homeland Security and dealing with all of this, I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, this is going to lead to internment camps. Well, America doesn't want to go back to what the forced internment of Japanese here, and what happened there. But Guantanamo or other facilities similar, and again, Guantanamo, because we have it, is what they're talking about, and because it's not in the United States, it's what they're talking about. Keeping the bad people out. Where do Americans sort of reflexively, or people who are law and order, quote unquote, Americans reflexively want to put? Well, we have Guantanamo. Send them to Guantanamo. These are not the kind of criminals. You don't put people who cross the border illegally next to people who tried to bomb and destroy the United States, if in fact that's who is remaining there.
You make entirely too much sense.
Right.
Confirmation hearings are underway, and there's some real doozies happening right now. As a matter of fact, I think that Kash Patel is on the hot seat. And so I think we've got some video Albert was going to put up for us
Yeah.
of Kash Patel's confirmation hearings. But Tulsi Gabbard is on the hot seat as well, RFK Jr. So there's some big votes coming down the pike. What do we
There
have,
are,
Albert?
and reading tea leaves, it's really difficult to tell
Yeah,
anything about who or will vote against these people.
sure.
We saw Collins, Murkowski, and McConnell vote against Pete Hegseth for defense, but that wasn't enough because Vice President Vance cast the tie-breaking vote. My guess is that one person won't be confirmed, and I don't know that that means that there's going to be a groundswell against them and they will withdraw, or they will get to a floor vote and be defeated. But I wouldn't bet a lot on what I just said either. There is still a 53-47. You have to not only lose Republican votes, you have to lose 4 Republican votes, but you also have to keep all the Democratic votes. And there are some Democrats who are going to vote for some of these people. And so I'm not sure that the 53-47 will matter in terms of a split as much with these. In descending order of difficulty, I would say that the most difficult is Kennedy because he's a Democrat. And then Patel, and then Gabbard. And even though Gabbard was a Democrat, I don't see her at DNI being as problematic, though, that she faced tough questioning from some Republicans yesterday. And there are some Democrats who were kind of kind to Kennedy. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. John Fetterman is a senator to watch on the Democratic side. I would say on the Republican side, I would keep your eyes on Bill Cassidy when it comes to Kennedy, Mitch McConnell across the board, Collins and Murkowski across the board, and perhaps even Deb Fisher, but I wouldn't bank on that.
You mentioned Cassidy, and I was reading this piece about how he's this one vote that really isn't guaranteed a Republican vote for RFK Jr. He was a gastroenterologist before he got into politics. He has life saving experiences with vaccines, and he gave Kennedy every chance to renounce the things that he has said about vaccines being linked to all kinds of diseases that they're not linked to. And Kennedy wouldn't do what he wanted him to do. So it could be that Cassidy is the one that steps aside and says, I can't vote for RFK Jr.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So here's the thing with these, and in kind of descending order again, and I think that's the whole point with Cassidy, and that's what makes it make what you just said make sense, and Cassidy's background in medicine. But then you go down the aisle, and Roger Marshall's was in medicine. Rand Paul was kind of in medicine. There are people that differ even under that umbrella, and I should say, I guess Rand Paul was in medicine. He was an ophthalmologist, so that's medicine. The 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 what you have to look at is there's a stat in baseball called wins above replacement. So how the team does when your sub is in there versus when you're in there, essentially, and that's kind of what you have to look at with these nominees, and so the one thing is that if Robert Kennedy is voted down, or if Kash Patel are voted down, if either of the two of them are voted down, the person who comes in is going to be largely different. They're going to be of the same mold and conservatism when it comes to Patel, and probably a little bit more suspect of the way the COVID vaccine was handled, et cetera, when it comes to Kennedy. I think Gabbard would be replaced by a Gabbard who will have some problems and not. So Democrats have to figure out which person would change the department the most were they to come in, and how important is that. And so I think when it comes to Kennedy and when it comes to Patel, you're going to get people who, should they not be confirmed, are going to be very different than the two of them. And that's why a Democrat voting against them, or even a Republican, like a Republican could vote, Bill Cassidy could vote against Kennedy and still know that he's going to get an HHS secretary with whom he agrees on most of the things,
Right.
right? It's not a ceremonial thing. With Kash Patel, he comes in with an enemies list and seemingly comes in with an agenda. And that might not be the case with whoever is the replacement nominee. But again, I think you get one at most of these people not confirmed.
Let's take a look at this video because apparently Kash Patel is having a bit of an issue with lying to the panel.
Stu Peters, does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what is
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
not off the top of my head?
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi.
That was an amazing moment from.
Yeah. He's just not answering the questions. He's not forthcoming at all, and it's rather combative.
Yeah, it is combative. These things get combative. He is less deferential than most nominees to any department are to the Senate committee members. And look, a lot of it is a show, right? I mean, if this were to happen as it did before C-SPAN in 1976, when Jimmy Carter named his cabinet, you didn't see any of these hearings. You read about them, you heard reports about them, but you didn't see the show that goes on.
Right.
But Patel, and I've watched a sickening number of these confirmation hearings over the years, and I like it. I mean, I find it interesting. I find it enlightening. You learn about the senators. You learn, that it's cool political theater, but that's what it is. And Patel is out of the mold because he is not the type of person. I mean, he's very combative and seemed to be very combative, almost arrogant in front of the committee. I don't think they like that, but I don't think that determines a vote either. I think the question is, the president gets a great deal of deference from his own party, whoever the president is, in being able to name his own cabinet.
One of the nominees that already has been confirmed is not one that we really focused on as far as, talking about it, looking at what was said. At least I didn't. That was the Secretary of the Interior now for Doug Burgum.
Yeah.
And, he's someone who was an oil industry enthusiast, and now he's the Secretary of the Interior. I don't know what's going to happen. I guess no matter what, it was going to be someone in there that's going to advocate Trump's policy. So does it really matter who?
It doesn't. And those that look, I mean, on both sides, these are the types of people you get, right? I mean, Doug Burgum's a billionaire. Doug Burgum is a big sky governor. He's someone who ran for president, then endorsed Trump. That makes perfect political sense. Is it our fantasy Secretary of the Interior? No, Donald Trump will never nominate our fantasy Secretary of the Interior, but he's a seemingly smart guy, and he fits the mold of who you would think would be the Secretary of Interior under Donald Trump. I mean, last time the first one I think was Ryan Zinke, who was from Montana. I mean, this is what you get. I mean, when they say elections have consequences, it's a very dismissive way of saying something, but the consequence here is that you get an Interior Secretary who will be far more conservative than
Sure.
you'd want.
In addition to all of the confirmation hearings going on, we had this week brought us two, I don't know if you want to call them faux pas or flubs by the Trump administration. One
Yeah.
was the federal funding thing, which a judge had to step in and go, yeah, no, can't do that. We're going to put a stop to it. And the other is the Elon Musk letter that went out to all federal workers that said, take an 8-month buyout or take your chances and roll the dice to see whether you still have a job. I understand there is some scuttlebutt that perhaps Musk went around the Trump administration and kind of did that solo. And so I don't know how that makes Trump look or whether he's really in charge of what's happening as far as people around him taking off and doing these things. I don't know.
Yeah, well, whether or not he went around the administration, there are certain people in the administration who don't like his presence, and for them to sort of float a balloon that Musk went around the administration is, I think, the beginning of the narrative, if you will. I'm tired of that word, but I just said it. That Trump and Musk will not be long for the world together in terms of administering policy. Musk comes at this as the richest man in the world, which makes politicians' ears perk up. I had dinner last night with a member of Congress here in California, and he said to me that he knows that colleagues of his who are terrified to go against some of the initiatives that Musk is saying, not against Trump, not against it, but initiatives that Musk is putting in because he's wanting to fund primaries for people who go against the things he says. I don't think that dynamic will last long. Look, Donald Trump likes loyalty, but he breaks up with people a lot, and I think that this is going to be fractured soon enough. As for the budget stuff, I mean, Russell Vought, who is the OMB nominee, Office of Management and Budget nominee, who is one of the architects of Project 2025, is under a lot of heat for that. They're saying it was that he messed up right out of the gate, and Democrats are not even letting that vote come to the floor. And so it is a very, very difficult situation for an administration to come in and mess up that badly in the first week with this, and it could cost Vought his position. I'm not sure yet if that will happen or not.
Does it offer us some hope if Democrats are really unable to keep votes from coming to the floor that maybe there's a way to at least slow them down?
Yes, I mean there are things that you can do from the filibuster on in the Senate to delay, but what should frustrate Democrats more is that there is such a divide in the Senate now. We haven't had one like this in a while. It's not even, I mean, there have been much bigger in both of our lives, much bigger gaps in the Senate than there are now by party. But this is the biggest we've had in a little while because we've had such an even Senate. So it's 53-47, and reasonableness isn't there in many circles because some of these people, so many of them are devoted to Trump in the way that they are. I think that's the real sticking point. So I'm not going to paint a rosy picture here. The Democrats have to do whatever they can to delay until 2026 until they can win the House back and make sure that what they're saying is articulated publicly. And I think messaging is going to be the big difference now. So, there are devices and there are tactics, but you can only delay for so long.
Tomorrow, Trump says that the tariffs are coming for Canada and Mexico, 25% tariffs, he says. And he said, listen, they don't really have products we need anyway. And also, he's upset about the flow of migrants at the southern border. He's upset about fentanyl. And so he's shaking up the neighborhood, going to slap down 25% tariffs on both of our neighbors. And Trudeau from Canada came out today and said, if he does this, we will respond accordingly. And that's the way it is. How is this all going to play out, Michael
Well,
Shure?
we don't know because the White House has given us no details about how the levies are going to happen. I mean, so we don't know what it's going to mean, but the Dow went down, the markets are responding to it. And his White House is, just falling back on promises made, promises kept, right? That he's going to do these tariffs. But, tariffs also generally come with exemptions. And I don't know if the White House is going to have exclusions. We know nothing about the details of this, and if you combine those three countries, I think it's over $1.5 trillion worth of business per year that they do with these three companies, and I can't believe that these tariffs are not going to have a negative effect,
Right.
and so I think it's especially concerning. But like a lot of what Trump does, he does one panel of a wall. So maybe he'll impose the tariffs on February 1st on Saturday, and then a few days later or a little while, it's like posturing, and then he'll come down. I don't know, but I mean, if Trump invites inflation, that is not something he wants on his legacy. And a lot of economists say that will bring, I'm not an economist, but a lot of economists say that that's going to invite in inflation. And the Commerce Department is, it's watching those numbers.
There's a statement made by Marco Rubio on Greenland that this is no joke, that we really are going after Greenland. And it's such an outrageous thing to think that we could just go buy Greenland, or if they don't want to sell it, take it over militarily, that it's kind of laughable. But the Trump administration seems to mean business on Greenland. What do you think that this is something we're going to see happen?
No, I mean, it's a little bit of promises kept, promises made, promises kept.
Sure.
Rubio, I don't think. I think this is going to be one of those things that are like, an early priority that gets kind of lost in the mud. I mean, I think Rubio is doing the work. Look, he was confirmed 99-0, and he's doing the work that the president wants done. And I don't think it's going to get anywhere. I think they can say we tried. Is really what it comes down to.
Lastly, I
Yeah.
wanted to give you an opportunity because I like it. I know a lot of people are interested when you come on the show. They want to see Michael Shure's 48 seconds of sports. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to slap it down.
Wow. Well, that's a co-hosted segment, co-branded and co-hosted by Albert. So I don't.
Albert's got to come in. Yeah.
But yeah, we got to bring Albert in for this. But I mean, I think the lead sports news going has to do with the playoffs and football. Neither of us have a team here. Albert's not here. 48 seconds of sports and he's gone. So I'm going to talk about today how I'm going to build up hockey because I only have a few seconds left. Hockey, the salary cap is rising. The league is at its most flush. More people are going. More people are buying the swag. More teams are making money. And eventually, before I leave this great earth, hockey will pass the NBA in sports popularity. That's my little goal.
I'm just rooting for Taylor Swift's boyfriend. That's all.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people are doing, and that's
Yeah.
just fine. I look, I I don't have animosity toward the Chiefs. A lot of times, I couldn't stand the Patriots. A lot of these sort of cocky winning teams people don't like. For some reason, the Chiefs haven't bothered me in that same way, but I get why people are upset with them. I don't like Philly sports fans. So my feeling is that I'm rooting against Philly sports fans, but if they win, they win, and my day will not be changed. The 49ers are going to win next year, so it doesn't matter.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you if there are any political stories that you're following that I didn't ask you about, because I love the work that you do. And I know you always have your fingers in a bunch of different pies politically. What are the upcoming stories that you see that will be upon us in the coming days?
In terms of a story, there isn't a particular story. There's a dynamic that I'm watching, and I'm watching the way leadership in both the House and the Senate are operating. So I'm watching to see what Hakeem Jeffries is doing, both to accommodate Mike Johnson, the speaker, but also where he's pushing back on him. What little things he's doing that are going to try and win back voters in an enduring way. I've noticed him, and he's not someone who wears God on his sleeve, but I've noticed him kind of invoking God in very casual ways, not in didactic ways, and that to me tells me that he's reaching out to a different segment, and he wants his caucus to reach out to a segment that they feel that they've lost. And then on the Senate side, I'm wanting to see how John Thune, as the new majority leader in the Senate, is able to both balance the power of the Senate, which he loves and sort of institutionalist senators do love, against the White House and against particularly a Trump White House, having to defend. I mean, he's somebody who is a pretty straightforward conservative, pretty religious, but kind of, I would say, establishment Republican politician. And he now has to engage with someone who is definitely not his type of person. And those interactions are super important for the way legislation comes to the floor. I don't think you can look at confirmation hearings because they're kind of irregular when it comes to what the Senate does in general. It's one of their tasks, but it does very little to do with the way they legislate. So there are going to be clashes, and I think finding out where those are going to be early on is a fascinating thing to watch more than it's a story.
Oh, I'm going to be asking you about this question next week. Michael Shure, thank you. Have a great weekend. Thanks for being on the Mark Thompson Show.
Bye, guys.
And we look forward to next Friday.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Me too. Bye-bye.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.